I defy you to find another church that's singing that. Yes. Another center that is singing that. So, in 1776, that character, by the way, was King George III. In 1776, King George III, refusing to give his American colonies independence, fought even until his death, although he ultimately begrudgingly accepted it in public in order to remain king, until he died in 1820, by then being dubbed Mad King George. Do most of you know this history? Yeah. Well, it's the American Revolution, you should. So, it's about our country fighting the colonies when they decided they no longer wanted to be a part of England. Well, King George was the king then. He just thought this was going to be some little skirmish that happened and it would all be fine. He also believed that without the colonies, England would be ruined. He had to have the colonies in order to be the power they were. Well, of course, France and Spain got involved. It turned into a world war, helping America become independent. The war officially ended in 1781, not 1776, by the way, 1781, and then it really was done in 1783 with the Paris Treaty that was signed. So why this song about surrender? Well, clearly it's King George stands there singing and saying, "You'll be back. You know, regardless of what you think, you will be back." And I thought what was really fascinating for me was the idea that, let's just say we are King George. And we have these things. Actually, you know, I'm going to switch that. In my head, I just went, let's pretend we're who we are, the colonies. And we've got all of these things that we're very much tied to. Aren't you all kind of tied to your habits, to your addictions, whatever they are? Oops, I lost my tape here. Aren't you all kind of tied to all the things that you think make you who you are? Yes or no? Yes, exactly. So, and you want independence from all those things that you really don't want to have part of your life. So, last week, I read you this Ernest Holmes quote. "It is very difficult to let go of the little, and we cannot take hold of the big until we let go of the little." Well, interestingly enough, the colonies were kind of little in England, but King George was having a very hard time letting go of these little colonies, and in so doing, literally destroyed much of England at the time in terms of money and all that they were putting into this war, depleting the beauty and the brilliance and the enormity of England just to keep these little colonies. That's how that side of it goes. And for us, it's pretty interesting because we were screaming for our independence, but what's the very next thing we end up doing? Kind of splitting and getting into a civil war. So a lot that happened in those days did not necessarily resolve all problems and everybody goes home happy. So Ernest Holmes says, it's difficult to let go of the little. We cannot take hold of the big until we let go of the little. And I asked you last week to surrender the little. What is yours to surrender? So I want to suggest and look at our minds. I want to look at your consciousness. Because when I say surrender the little, I am talking about your addictions, your habits, your regrets, anything that you're still holding on to that's holding you in a pattern of feeling like a slave. Feeling like you are someone who is being held back, right? So in terms of surrendering your little. So I'd like to make those things your inner wars. Does anybody feel sometimes that their mind is a little bit of a warring field? Right. So that we know the truth. Two hands. Good. We know the truth, but we also still have all of these little colonies of wars going on inside of us, saying they want their independence to take over your life, to be able to be free, to live their own life. How many things inside of you are leading your life for you? How many of these little things are literally taking your life on a trajectory just by the the size and the energy and the passion that you put in those things, whatever they are, and you get to name them and claim them for yourselves. So this whole idea of surrendering your inner wars, what are your habits, what are your addictions, what are your regrets, what are your failures? Do you know how many people live their lives just reliving their failures? And I don't mean reliving them in actuality. I mean reliving them because you don't let them go, because you keep dragging them with you wherever you go. So that's what we're looking at surrendering this month. Surrendering your regrets, your addictions, your failures, your successors, and all of this stuff. Let me tell you what all of this stuff is. Your failures, your successes, your habits, your addictions, all of these things are nothings but bundles of consciousness. Do you know that? I thought about this morning. I was like, it's just consciousness, folks. It's just, Tiffany just talked about it. You know, you can surrender. You can put up a fight that went from almost an 8-year fight between England and the United States, which wasn't the United States, and the colonies. You can spend 8 years fighting for the inevitable, or you can just, King George could have just said, you know what, just give them their independence. Like when it happened, like saving 6 years, not having to write that song. You would have had just think what would happen if you gave up your war that quickly. What is your war? What are you warring with? What's going on inside of you that's causing you to be in a state of war, in a state of conflict? So it's just this ball of consciousness. That's all it is. I want you to think for a second about a habit you have. And I'm not, talking about, a big drastic, heroin addict or something. But we all have certain addictions. So what is your addiction? What's the addiction that you would even call an affliction? I can turn this into Dr. Seuss talk. What is your addiction that you recognize as an affliction? Something you'd like to get rid of. Just bring it to the forefront of your mind. Like what do you go to escape perhaps actually dealing with something? What is your addiction? What is it? Well, whatever that is, whether it is a real addiction like alcohol or drugs or whatever, or if it's just you're addicted to television, you're addicted to whatever. All it is, in mind, is a ball of consciousness. Whatever that is, it's a ball of consciousness. It's the way your mind has taken your beliefs, your already established premises of life, all that you think and believe in your life, rolled up into a little ball that turns into nicotine addiction. Turns into overeating. Turns into, you name it, there's an A for everything. Right? So that's all it is consciousness. Now, this consciousness tends to turn into kind of tumors, tends to turn into these very solid things that you almost can't even get in to look at without having to extract them. That's what we think mentally. But in truth, that's not the truth. That's just our belief about them. Really, it's just consciousness. That is all it is. A tiny little ball of consciousness that can be expanded and broken up within a matter of a second. That's why some of the great early metaphysicians were able to literally have amazing healings, like Emma Curtis Hopkins, because she didn't deal with all the crap. She just said, someone come in with a problem, she'd be like, don't even talk to me about it. She didn't have an hour lengthy, and this is a little warning to my practitioners, you don't need an hour lengthy discussion about the problem. Because ultimately, what are you doing? You're cementing more of the problem into place. These practitioners and ministers that feel that they need to talk for 2 hours, we just had a report come back about that. Someone spoke for 2 hours about a problem just to get to the end of it, and it's like, what happened to the idea? Turn entirely away from the condition. Once you understand what it is, turn away from it and put your attention here. That goes. Because it's about consciousness. And if you do not give this attention, it has nowhere to go. So that's what I wanted us to talk about today, in light of this song. Because I think we let go, we surrender things, and then the things we're surrendering have a life of their own that are over here going, I'll be back, wait and see, you can't live without me. I know that's not the lyric, but... And yet it's us. See, we are not just the colonies. We are the colonies and King George. We're all of it. So we're actually saying, I'm free. And over here we're saying, yeah, but, all those yeah buts. How many of you still have tons of yeah buts you're living with? Yeah, that's what they're called, yeah buts. So you're not just breaking free, you're still having to deal with these to the degree that you give them power. To the degree that, look at all the colonies. Many of the colonies, look at Benedict Arnold. Benedict Arnold decided he went back. He was a big hero before he became Benedict Arnold, the traitor. And why was he a traitor? Because he just made a decision, I think I want to stay with England, not with his colonies. So he then became a traitor to the colonies. So you don't think that some of your addictions and some of your habits and some of the negative things that you still live out are calling you a traitor because you've turned away from it? Yeah, they are. You don't think there's still energy in those things? Yes. People say to me all the time, why is it I go to these classes and I go see practitioners, and it still comes back? Because it's still alive. Consciousness is alive. It is never ending. Consciousness doesn't just dissipate into nothingness. Consciousness is always present. If you create it, it's always present. It just depends. Where are you going to shop? Are you going to Ralph's or are you going to Vaughn's? That was really strange. I've never been to Vaughn's. If you're in Vaughn's, you're not in Ralph's. If you're in Ralph's, you're not in Vaughn's. I really should have said Saks and Bloomingdale's. That would have been much better for me. So really, that's what it's all about. I think we think that we let go of our habits, we let go of our addictions. I'm healed, I'm done. And think it's no longer anywhere near us, and we're blindsided when suddenly it pops up again. The revolution pops up again and says, nope, I'm still here. Now, the colonies in England, they signed the peace treaty and they were done. And yet, there are still, it's funny, I was online researching this talk, and there are still people that are annoyed that we are not English, that we are not part of England. There are still people in England that still think that the American people are traitors. They're really British subjects. Do you know that? There are still people in the world that are fighting that the world is flat. There's still those people. So, and by the way, I'm saying people. There are people like you, people walking the earth who think it's flat. People who have consciousness, who are putting that consciousness into the world. And that consciousness you are swimming in, even though you think it's crazy, right? That the world's flat? Oh my God, is there anybody here? Is there anyone here who I'm offending? Please see the practitioners at the end of service. That is happening. So I want to go on to King George at the end of his life. So King George III signed the treaty in Paris. Do you know why? Because he had a choice. He could sign the treaty in Paris, or he could abdicate the throne. That's what they gave him. You got two choices here, King. Either queen. No. You got two choices here, King. Leave, abdicate the throne, and we'll get someone in here that actually knows how to run this country, or sign the peace treaty and live your life out happily. And he did. He lived out his life as king till his death. As their king till his death. But he went mad. That's why they call him Mad King George, because he went crazy. You know what made him crazy? The colonies. That he had to sign them over. That he had to give them up. And it drove him insane. So from 1978, when did he die? He died in 1978. He looked awful. In 1783, when he signed the treaty, he didn't die till 1820, I think it was, or 1802. There's a 2 in it. He died later. But as time went on, he couldn't let it go. Any of you relate? What is it that you just can't let go? Because guess what? You're going to end up letting it drive you crazy, like this microphone. It'll drive you crazy. So the lesson here with King George is that, are you ready to surrender all the things that if you don't, will make you crazy? Because they will. They really will. Even Barbara and Dell singing I Surrender. You know, I speak about Nora all the time. I talk to her all the time. She is a very vibrant part of my life, as much today as when she was here. And it can be crazy making. This type of loss, this type of grief can make you crazy. I get it. Another friend called me and said, I'm amazed that I still see you at services on Sundays. She watches on service. She goes, I just envisioned that if this happened to me, I'd be laying in bed for a couple of years. And I said, you know, I get that. And trust me, there are moments. But this idea of if you can't let something go, it will infiltrate your life to the point where you will go mad. You know, and you will allow it to literally upset your life. Obviously, it's only been 4.5 months since Nora's passed, so it's still just unimaginable to me. But I am clear. I had this talk with my son, and he said to me something about wanting to do something in his life so that he could keep Nora alive. And I said to him, I just need to tell you, your life is your life. It is not Nora's life. Your life is to be lived and enjoyed, and your life is to be passionately expressed, and it really doesn't have anything to do with Nora, but it will always be a part of Nora. And as I'm telling him this, and had the opportunity to tell him this, it all came right back to me. And I was like, wow, okay, I get that. I really get that. So how do I let go of whatever negativity surrounds this in such a way that it could drive me mad, could make me crazy? And that same thing I have mine, you have yours. What is it that is still in there that you need to surrender in order to be pure of heart and mind and soul, to really allow the life that is yours to live to come forward? Nora's always going to be a part of my life. She's everywhere I look. But I am on the journey and on the path of healing this heart of mine. It's broken, but it's broken open. It's not broken shut, and it's not broken in a way that it's suddenly now defective. Not at all. If anything, it's broken open and gotten bigger and fuller and way more understanding of what life is. And I get it. And I can look at my habits and my addictions and my whatever it is that still stands in my way. So, the title of my talk today, could you imagine? I'm now going to start my talk. Emancipation, Proclamation. So Emancipation Proclamation is actually from the Civil War. It's from our own Civil War, and here's part of it. Here's what it says. All persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforth shall be set free, shall be free. Are and henceforth shall be free. All persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and hereforth shall be free. So, and I saved it for the end of the talk because of this. I wanted to lead us into our week. There are things inside of you that you have been holding onto as slaves. You use your addictions. You use your habits. You use the past. You use your failings. You use your successes almost as slaves to give you credence to live the life you're living now. And that's not where your freedom comes from. That's not where your creativity comes from. That's not where your passion comes from. Your passion, your freedom, your creativity, your divine essence comes from something that has nothing to do with all the things that we are sometimes using to give allowances to the way we live our lives. When we say remember who you are, it's to allow us to remember who we are at such a bigger concept of life. So, this whole month is about surrendering to the truth. And the truth is, you are free. Amen. You are free. And what that means is you get to sit here right now and decide, what are you free from and what are you free to? Remember, every single thing that you would surrender in your life is nothing but a ball of consciousness. No matter how thick it looks, no matter how real it feels, it is a ball of consciousness. Last month was our month on focus. You get to choose what you focus on. Once you surrender what no longer works for you, then you get to just choose which one will it be. So you are free to choose what you want, and you are free to surrender that which doesn't work for you. So this week, as you go through your week, take a look at your life. Decide, what do I need to surrender? Where do I need to cut the colonies free to just be who they want to be? Where is my Emancipation Proclamation? Well, it's already here within the soul of me, because God that is who I am, what I am, God has ordained that anything that is holding me back, I have the right and the freedom to cut free. Anything that could stop me from being the best James Mellon that I could be, the most amazing person I could be, the most loving, the most creative, the most successful, the most health-filled, the most vibrantly alive person I can be. Anything that could stop me, I have the power, I have the right, I am sitting right at this table ready to sign it into declaration. It is mine to do, it is yours to do, to let it go and to move on from that state of pure freedom. Namaste. Thank you, and thank you.